Our next session comes from the extraordinary Margot Roache-Green. I first met Margot at the Admin Awards in San Francisco. Sunny Noonan very kindly invited me to go and hand out an award. And when Margot won the Lifetime Achievement Award, I don't think there was a dry eye in the house. She's almost 80, and for most of her working life, over 60 years, she has worked to elevate all the people in her local community through various initiatives that she has put in place herself. She's passionate about education. She is a role model for many. And I just knew that I had to bring her to a wider audience. I was absolutely thrilled when she said yes. And I hope you'll agree, having seen this interview, that she really is extraordinary. Thank you, Sunny, for finding her. She is a beacon of what a true administrative professional can achieve when they step up and make it their mission to change the world. Please join me in welcoming the extraordinary Margot Roache-Green. Hello, Margot. How lovely to have you with us.
Oh, thank you. Hello, Lucy. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Even better because I know our audience are absolutely going to love you. So I
Oh,
have
thank
some
you.
questions that I've crafted because I really hope that they're going to show them exactly who you are. And that's just wonderful. So I'm going to start with a really, really simple one. What was it that inspired you to pursue a career as an administrative professional?
Well, first of all, considering my age and my work experience, this year will be 63 years of work experience. At that time, administration was the job that almost all women had. And it was considered, it's a very professional job. And so, and and being a woman, almost a natural administrator. So it was just a natural thing for me to go into it because I thought there weren't a lot of career paths at that time. So that one was really the key to getting into business and whatever. And so, yeah, that's why I chose that. It was the thing to do.
Mm.
And yes.
But right from the beginning, you had an overwhelming commitment to education. And I know that you had real challenges in pursuing that, didn't you? So, how did you manage to do that? I mean, between us, my husband and I have 7 kids, and I know
Mhm.
the challenges of children, full stop. But for you, how did you juggle your work and your education and your career?
It was not easy. It took a long time. It took me 10 years to get a degree,
Wow.
but they were wonderful years. But I was a very young mom. I was a teenage mom. It wasn't something I planned. There was a lot of backstory behind that. But I I knew the only way out to really take care of my family was to be educated. Education, I think, is the key to most things. And so I had to develop skills. So I went to school. I took care of my kids, and with the help of my family, I worked at one point, worked 3 jobs, and there were part-time jobs, and went to school, but still found enough time for the most part to at least read a book to my kids before they went to bed. Sometimes I was exhausted, but that was a commitment that I had. But my mom helped me out a lot, and actually, it's an old African proverb, but it's always a cliche. I'm sure that it takes a village to raise a child. But people in the neighborhood, they were sort of very supportive, and yeah, I didn't do it by myself. It was the help of others, and also, you know, education was the freedom for me that would allow me to be productive as a worker and also as a mom and also to have a fairly decent life. So those were the things that I strived for, and I
Well,
had to
kept
do
you
it.
motivated by the sound of it. Yes, good. So Tell me, Margot, at the beginning of your career, was there a pivotal moment that really helped you to understand that you wanted to be making a difference in the community, in your community? Because so much of your work has been about that.
Well, you're only as good. I think the community is only as good as the people in it. And we can lay back and we read. At that time, it was the newspaper, and you could read all the negative things, or you could, and now today it's online and you can read what's happening. But unless you are part of some solution in the community, to sit back and just say, oh, times are bad and this is, you have to have some kind of commitment and some kind of, you have to be a part of it to make a difference. And so I can remember, particularly here in this country, you're always compared to something, and Black people have been marginalized, and also, you're not as smart as you're not. And so for me, I knew I was as smart as anybody else. I thought. I mean, not that I was not above average, but what is average? And so I would, growing up, I saw youngsters that had a lot of talent, but would never go anywhere. And I'm saying, why? So I just thought that I had a commitment as a person of color, uh, also being part of a community to see what I could do to make a difference in others' lives because people made a difference in mine. I mean, you got to make opportunities for others because others have made opportunities for you. So you have to bring somebody back up with you as you go along. And so my community is very important to me. And so, uh, I mean, not to contribute to it is just, I think, neglectful.
I would agree. But certainly, I mean, your efforts in establishing health centres in marginalised communities back in the 1960s were groundbreaking. So, how did you establish a need and what obstacles did you face in making this vision a reality?
You know what is interesting about that? I was a secretary at this consulting firm. And so this consulting firm had just gotten a contract. At the time, it was when they decided it was a lot of turmoil in this country. We had riots and we had just a lot of division and dissension. And it was realized that a lot of people, it was frustration for a lot of Black people. And so it says, oh, they were disadvantaged and maybe we'll give opportunities. And then they also found out that, certain parts of the country did not have adequate health care. So this firm had gotten a big contract with, at the time, it was an agency called Department of, oh gosh, it's, I can't remember it right now, but it was to help sort of develop healthcare that wasn't sort of tiered. So as the secretary, I was sitting there and I was typing things up for, and I kept looking at this stuff and I'm saying, gee, you're trying to establish roles for people in the community to participate in this effort of to develop a partnership with health centers so they would start using the facilities. Now, it was interesting because people down south and south of the United States, like in South Carolina and Alabama and all those places, even though there were facilities, they could only go maybe once or twice a week. And so they sort of created their own health kind of their health care. They used a lot of herbs and used a lot, even had folk doctors, folk medicine and all of that. And in South Carolina in particular, they had a worm problem. So this consulting firm was getting together a group of doctors and all of that to kind of mitigate this problem. And and I was looking at these reports, and so I started asking my boss, "So why are you doing this? Are you involving them? And what kind of role are these people going to play?" And I was asking so many questions. So my manager said, "Why don't you come with us?" So I would, to take notes. But as I went, I saw things because I was part of a community that sort of had been disenfranchised. I knew what a dual health system was all about. So I said, you got to bring them in the fold. You got to put them on you have to put them on the board to at least hear them. If you want them to utilize that system, because if you create a system and there's no utilization, then you wasted your money. So I said, you need to be a part and let them be a part. Go and find out who the leaders are in the community. And it was like, which I thought was very simple. They had not thought about some of those things. Because they were high level doctors and psychiatrists, and that's who ran this company, they didn't think about the basic grassroots. And I think that's where administrators come in. They see things differently because they're involved in all aspects of a business or whatever it is. So I think we have a different view. And so as a secretary, and I was going in, and then I became a consultant with them, a secretarial consultant, right? They would run things by me before they did stuff. And that was it was such a reward. Uh, I just couldn't believe it. And that goes to show you, and even that sort of translate to today. I mean, if you really want to know what's happening, ask the administrator.
I couldn't agree more. And you just kept on seeing things, didn't you? Because then in the
Yes,
1980s, you looked
yes.
at women on welfare and you looked at farm workers and you decided that you wanted to empower them to give them economic self-sufficiency. How did you go about that? And how did that idea come about in the first place?
Well, I was involved with what you call a workforce development program. And so the program was geared toward farm workers because it was seasonal. And so how do you, when the picking season is over, what do you do with people, their unemployment, as opposed to them just getting aid? And it was amazing to me because the farm workers, and at this time I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. The farm workers would be out in the fields and they had developed their own solar panels. And they would have a frame and they would put foil on this frame. And then the sun would hit the foil and would heat up the water or their food for lunch. So that's a solar panel that was used to heat. And I mean, you're talking about energy conservation. That's it. And so I was involved. I was working with this program as an administrator and also just helping out and sort of also creating an environment that's conducive for people to make a transition, to make them feel good about themselves. Because of my community work, I always felt that anybody could do almost anything within reason, but we kind of minimize capacity. And so I realized that these farm workers had capacity because they had survival skills. And even though some of them were monolingual, they could there were ways that they could translate that skills into a business acumen that would pay off for them. And so there was a project that the governor of California was looking for solar installers. So I helped this program write proposals to say, yeah, people can be trained to do these installations. And these farm workers were trained to do those installations as well as putting together manufacturing parts for computers. Technology was just beginning. And at that time, the Silicon Valley had a lot of manufacturing before they took it offshore. So the sad part is that, it was booming for people in the lower rung that they could gravitate and move up into a middle class. But they took that offshore and sent because it was cheaper. As you know, everything is generated around capitalism. So it was cheaper to take it offshore. But luckily, some of those people had established, some of the farm workers and other community people had established skills that sort of were transferable into other areas. But then a lot of them also became part of the homeless population. And, you'd be surprised the profile of some of the homeless people at one time were really gainfully employed. And because of the economy, things changed for a lot of folks. Yeah.
Mm. And
But
you were supportive at that time?
yes, and so I still am working in the community. I just think that that's what you got to do. I still try to um like even with making sure people got health care. I'm an advocate. Um so when I worked for social services, I worked in an area where people had to make sure people had part of that they got health care that they were entitled to. I think health care is a right. And because if you don't have health care, and in this country, we say that we are a caring country and that we want to help people. So if they didn't have health insurance, and they went to the emergency room, somebody had to pay for it. So a lot of people who are uninformed think, well, I don't want to pay for, say, this affordable health care. That's the new act that we had under the Obama administration. It was called Affordable Health Care. And so that was an act that allowed um, just everyday people to have health care. And Medi-Cal, which is the healthcare system in California, at one time you had to have children. And so, be a parent or whatever. But then they broadened that to say, anyone who from 18 on up who live in a certain income bracket should be entitled to health care. So I worked in that effort of making sure people learned how to fill out the applications correctly, that they could get this health care because it's expensive to
Yeah.
keep people unhealthy because somebody's going to pay for it. And where they had a lot of resistance about this public insurance program, we were paying anyway because they would show up at emergency rooms. And so, people fail to realize that. Why not it be less expensive to provide for them up front as opposed to waiting for episodic emergency care? And let them be in a preventive situation too to help stay healthy and to prevent some things. So
Mm.
it gets to be very complicated because some of our population, we have a citizenry that is uninformed about assistance, providing, supportive systems. They think, my taxes are going up and, but it's going to, you're paying anyway. And they're not aware of that. You're not aware of that. So if you can kind of control the costs with providing for people ahead of time with prevention, then it's less expensive. You have a healthier community, and people will appreciate that. And you teach them. You don't. It costs to keep people ignorant, and it costs. But for sometimes, as we see now, it's getting to be very political to keep people uninformed. You have more control. And
Mm.
that's my role. My role is to try to inform the community and, go back to school, find a skill. And even if you don't go to college, find something that you do well and enhance that. The least little thing, craftsmanship, all of that. A lot of those things are dying, but they're still needed. And so my role now is to make sure kids who are really college bound to help them with that, with trying to find scholarships and creating scholarship paths for them. And for those who can't, there's training. Find out, electrical workers, plumbing. Those are skills that are needed, and they pay well, and they will afford you a better life, and
Mm.
you become major contributors.
Mm. You're still working as an assistant at this point, right?
Yes. Yes and no. It was like back and forth. They were paying me assistance money, but you know what? I never had a job that I didn't like because I always found the goodness in everything. And so, I mean, there were tasks that were, I would call them scum tasks that I didn't like to do, but I did them. But I always looked at what I did in relationship to the goal, in relationship to what the mission is. I always wanted to make sure there was a correlation. And when I saw it askew, I would speak up and say, we're doing things that doesn't make sense. It doesn't really lead us to what it is we're trying to do. And so
Mm.
even to, in my present role, which by the way, I'm retiring in June after 63 years of work experience, and then I'll be 80. I'm retiring June 28th. Looking forward to that. But even today, I want to make sure that what I do really articulates to what it is that we say that we do and that we're trying to accomplish.
Mm. And you just keep seeing things. I mean, I was looking at your CV, and I see that you then moved to IBM. So now you're up to your neck in technology in the 90s, and
Well,
you're still looking
yeah.
at how that can help your community.
Well, when I was at IBM, actually, it was before, it was after the farm workers program, where I was helping farm workers. I went to IBM as an administrator, and I was really very technical. And but it was like utopia for me. I mean, IBM had all of the support that you could go into their stock room. We called it stationary stores. It was like walking into, Office Depot or something. You could pick up anything you needed, and all I'm saying, wow. And it was like, and they had a lot of support systems, but I also saw a lot of waste, as a administrator. I thought, gee, this company has so much money. I was so used to community programs, this was like, oh. And so that I learned a lot about technology, but I also learned a lot about waste. Big business, you think about, people talk about government waste, but there's also waste in private industry. And so I tried to not overuse anything. I was always trying to be a minimalist. And everybody would say, it's not your money, Margot, but it is my money. I like to, we pay for stuff. We pay for, businesses get big breaks, and we don't as, citizens sometimes. So I just have this different mindset, I guess. It's kind of weird. But anyway, they must have gotten a hold of the fact that we're wasting money too, because then they started downsizing. And so in the downsizing, um, I wrote a user guide for things that the secretaries used to do, and they start saying, well, there's some things that some of these principals can do for themselves. So I said, well, we can't just throw them out there. We can't sort of shrink the admin pool and throw the professionals out, the so-called professionals out on their own. So I wrote this user guide, and I got a big award for that. And so that was fun. And yeah. And then I went from that into, I became a marketing administrator, where I was still, and it's very interesting. Every job, even with the principals that you support, they have administrative tasks. And I used to say, don't waste your time. You're an engineer. I can do that for you. So you can spend more time being the engineer, and I can do the other things, which are just as important. But that's how you kind of make sure people are focused on, you start realigning, and that creates good jobs too. What can I take from this professional job that doesn't necessarily require that engineering, but it requires skill, but not the engineering skill. And I can sort of hand it off to somebody else. And we use that back to create jobs. They also use it to eliminate jobs. So it's we don't need to do that anymore. Just throw it out, and they don't give it to anybody. And just it becomes the big hole. And we see a lot of that now as they try to use AI and they try to use bots, which I hate. I like the bots. I mean, I don't want to bot them. I hate them. And AI is the challenge for us, but it's still so artificial. You need that human scent. You really do.
Mm. And so tell me about using technological advancements, not just to embrace change, but to bridge gaps and to foster connections with your community.
Well, there are a lot of technology is really, really great. And of course, it has glitches like anything else. But it allows you to kind of collecting data to make good decisions, collecting data to create jobs, to create educational opportunities, to inform the community of what's going on, and to really make the community a part of this new technology. It brings you, it has such good, they have a lot of good elements about it. It can bring the community together. It can serve as a educational vehicle. It does already, as you know. And so it it's it's important that everybody have access. So it's interesting. Almost everybody has a cell phone now. You don't have landlines, you don't have telephone booths. And so the cell phone is really a mini computer. So, teaching people how to use it properly, using that as a means of bringing a community together. Now, for instance, we have a lot of, after 2 or 3 years, some of these laptops go kaput. So I talked my manager into letting me, actually, it started out as a error. We have certain requirements that we have to do to protect data, customer data. And so it was my job as the administrator here and the office manager to make sure that when our computers stop working or they're no longer under warranty, to e-waste them. Well, I kept saying we had a stack of e-waste that were like almost 5 feet high. And so I said, wow, gee, and I didn't know what the procedure was. And so I knew someone said, oh, this needs to be e-wasted. So I just took out the hard drives, I scanned them, and then I correlated the hard drive with the computer, with the laptop, with the name. So I knew what came out of what. So I was protecting the data. I didn't, and then I gave them away to senior citizens who were, and because you could get a hard drive for $39.95 from Amazon or somewhere. And so someone came back and said, you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to protect client data. I said, well, here's the client data in this little box. So it would cost us thousands of dollars almost to e-waste because it's by weight and I had tons of it along with other stuff, displays and all of that. I said, so, I protected the data because I just took out the hard drives, and then I just gave away the computers so people could, as opposed to buying a new computer, they could buy a hard drive for $39.95. So the CEO said, "Oh, Margaret, don't worry, you're not going to lose your job. You did the right thing." And so we sort of developed a new system around that off of my era, but it was the sensible thing to do, I thought. I mean, nobody told me what the process was, so I just, I knew I had to protect the data, so we have a new policy. Yeah.
You're a great advertisement for common sense. I love it. And just look at how many people have benefited. And then you set your sights on the youth. So your Pathway to College and Career programme has opened many doors, I know, for Oakland's underserved youth. Can you share a success story that particularly stands out for you?
Yeah, there's quite a few. And this program, Pathway to College, I was on the board of East Oakland Youth Development Center for 20 years. And this is I hate to say it, it's not a nice word, but title. It's it's in the killing fields of our city, where we have high crime rates, we have a lot of drug abuse, we have domestic violence, we have a lot of ills because people are disenfranchised, they're unemployed, and but we have this big facility for youth in that community. And we started this Pathway to College program and just going around knocking on doors of businesses saying, look, would you be willing to just give a little money to help us establish a scholarship fund? And yeah, we got a good response. It is so good now. Even Amazon gave us like over close to $1 million. And my company has given a lot. And we've had kids out of this, I always call them diamonds in the dust. I have two of them at Stanford, pre-med. I got one that's down in, we have educated over, I should have gotten some statistics for you. It's been over several thousand kids. I should have gotten that for you so you'd know. But we're talking about kids who had no future, whose parents, you know, some of the parents, you hear about a lot of negative parents are not involved, but some of the parents are working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet because it's so expensive to live here. So, the kids were sort of raising themselves. And some of the kids after school were going home cooking dinner for their younger siblings and things like that. We did have uh, what they call home alone cooking class. Kids learned how to cook. And so a couple of them wanted to be chefs. They've gone to some of the culinary schools. And so they have been able to send so many kids to not only the Ivy League schools and other schools, HBCUs and other colleges throughout the country. It's been a phenomenal response because businesses in particular, want to be a part of a success story. It's good marketing for them, it's good for the community, and it's just the right thing to do. And because, crime is expensive, and yet on another hand, sometimes it's a business around that too. It's like very interesting. What helps also on one end also helps on another end, and sometimes even that there's a negative thing in the middle, and it's very because what's bothering me now is the whole. Sometimes they're looking for people to fail because there's a big economy in the corrections area and the whole law enforcement. There's an economy around jails, private jails, and all of that. So sometimes some people benefit from that. But I contend that we lose in the long run because we are putting minds in locked up that could be doing very beneficial things for the community. But I think everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a purpose. Everyone has skills. Now, we're not going to win it all. I mean, we just have some people that have biological issues that affect their success or environmental issues. But education is the key. Education and training. Everyone doesn't have to go to the university, but everybody can be a contributor. And so we just need to find out what it is that they have that can be a contributing factor to the environment, to their family, to the community. It's to life in general. Life is such a gift. Life is
Where,
such a gift.
where did
And,
your passion come from, Margot?
you know, as a teenage mom, I'll never forget. I I had some rough times. I was in the hospital. I had never had prenatal care, but prior to delivery, I was having some issues. So I had to go to the emergency room. And actually, and it's this whole issue now that's coming up, as you know. Um, the police department came in to interview me because they thought was having an abortion because I was very small. And they interviewed me and interrogated me for 2 hours, trying to find out where I went because they thought I was trying to have because I was having hemorrhaging problems, and so they thought I had gone to an abortionist and I was being interrogated. It was awful. So finally, an intern came by and said, this young girl is having contractions, and he was able to take me. And so I had a 2-pound baby, but that survived, who is my son. He has 3 wonderful girls, all educated. One is in Korea right now teaching school. So I made sure that I was going to be a good mom. I was going to do all I could because the the negativity that I felt. Um, and that's not the only incident. There's been several incidences where people would say, oh, I'm surprised. You're different. You're not like other Black people. I'm saying I like everybody I know. But so there's always this element of you're less than. And I was always going to prove that no, we're the same as, and even more in some instances. So you got to be a part of a solution. You can't, and you also can't waddle in it, but you got to kind of build upon it and make a difference and show that you're as good as, and you can help build a world. The world is made up of a lot of things, as you know, and it's like, I want to fit in. At the same time, I want the world to be ready for me too, and
Mm,
others like me. So yeah. And like I said, life is a gift and you got to make it. You can't, we all have had ups and downs. We've all have had ups and downs. But it's so nice to be here and and to enjoy this. And while you're here, you got to do something. I don't know. And my mother and grandmother, particularly my grandmother, she was a real doer. You were very self-taught, probably went to the third or fourth grade, taught herself how to read, spoke Italian because she worked for Italian people that she learned to speak the language and they treated her royally. And she just instilled that into me. Um, you know, do all you can while you're here. And so, but I love people. I love all kinds of people. I just love people. It's like, that's where I get my high. I mean, it's, I just get my high helping, you know,
mm,
it's, yeah, I've never, I'm one of these people. I'm, I'm from the inner city and I'll never forget when I was at IBM, one of the guys I worked for had a daughter that was having problems, right? And she was beginning to use drugs. And so my manager asked me to talk with her because he thought because I was Black and from the inner city, I knew all about drugs. I didn't know anything about drugs. But it's like, so I'm an inner city person and I've seen things all around me, but I never partook. And I think there's something about being resilient, being able to resist. And that's what I did. But some people couldn't. So I'm saying I was going to help those who couldn't resist. to resist some of the temptations that keep you from being who you are.
Mm. I just love your story so much. It's so inspiring. And I know
Oh,
that
thank you.
end of last year, you got awarded the Jeanette Castellano Lifetime Achievement Award at Sunny Noonan's Admin Awards. And I know that that recognition meant a huge amount to you, both personally and professionally. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know what is interesting? I went to a seminar, just a little, and it was just to get away from the office that day because I needed a break, and I had never seen the Salesforce office. And so I got this thing, and I think it's because I started out after I left social services and I kind of retired from there, and I only got a certain percentage of salary. And I must say that I needed that whole salary again when once I to live in California. So I said, I got to get me a part-time job. So I signed up with a temp agency and they hired me as a little admin assistant at my firm where I am now. And so I guess Robert Half was one of the sponsors and they sent out, invitations to people that used to be in their on their roles. So I got this invitation. So I said, oh, I'm going to go. I need that break. And they're going to serve breakfast too. Something about food that just lures you, right? So I said, so I said, I'm going to go over to San Francisco and go to this thing. I thought, man, I went and it was nicely set up. It was very nice. And I listened to, uh, the folks there and they made a presentation about me and I had no idea. I just, I didn't know the impact that that whole admin awards does. I mean, it recognizes, not only does it recognizes, it advocates. There are other professional organizations and they sort of sell their wares and they do all of that, but they provide training. But for me, the admin awards provide training, it's camaraderie, but they also keep the keep businesses in line in terms of, you need admins. You'll be nothing without admins. And so when I, I still didn't take it that serious. I thought it was just a nice little thing. But when I got that award and that whole presentation, and I think I mentioned my grandmother always said, I want my flowers when I'm living, not when I'm dead. And so when they asked me, I met Katura, who said, I you're very interesting because they had this little thing. How many has been working more than 20 years? How many? Well, I won this award because at that time I had been working 62 years, so I got a sweatshirt. And so then she interviewed me and started talking to me. And she said, oh, she said, you may be eligible. And I'm saying, uh-huh. Okay, thank you. I still didn't think much of it. But when I got that award and when I went to the event, and so I had to give my managers, all the managers that I worked for and things and the things that they said, which I didn't know, I was just amazed. And then when they presented me the award and the people that were there and all the other contestants, I said, this thing is a big deal. And it was, I mean, I was so tired, and I'm still reeling. And actually, I got an award from my company for getting the award. I was like, oh, and I just the benefit personally. My family was there, and people that I worked with, and then to see the other people in the audience, how they were so revved up and how they just felt so, it was just a whole environment. And Sunny's mom was just her career was unbelievable. And to be associated with someone of that caliber, I'm still high. It has given me more incentive, you know. I always say that now I'm going to die young at an old age. Even at 80, and I'm expecting to relocate. Now we'll be 80 rather, and I'm expecting to to relocate. I'm already trying to find my path when I get there to be involved in the community and to also maybe volunteer somewhere as a administrator somewhere to help something. But administration is so key to everything we do. And the administrator is, in fact, the catalyst for almost every business. They may try to eliminate it through AI, which they will not be able to do. They may be able to kind of affect the numbers. We may not have the numbers, but you will always have the tasks and the functions that
Mm.
need to carry out, because technology is great, but you still need that human, like I said, a human scent behind some of those things to implement certain things. Um,
Mm.
but that admin award is that organization is just unbelievable. And for Sunny to devote her time, there's nothing, recognition is, money's great because you got to have it, you got to live with it. But when you get recognized just by your peers, there's nothing like it.
Mm. For sure. Now, listen, I have two last questions for you. The first is that even now, at the age of 79, you are still working. How do you balance your commitment to your profession and to your community and make sure that your life is balanced as well?
Mm. It's well, and I have two grandkids that live with me still. And one that's she's in the 11th grade. The other one is second year college. Um, and I have five granddaughters, all five gorgeous granddaughters, all smart. I'm very proud of them. It's, I don't know, I've been able to, I've done it so long, it's like secondhand. Um, and my therapy is I make hats. I'm a milliner. And so
You.
when things get, being a milliner keeps me out of the medicine cabinet. I'm not on antidepressants or anxiety medications. And it keeps me off of somebody's couch. Now, I think those things are viable things when you encounter issues. So millinery has enabled me to kind of put that, you know, it's sort of replaced that. And I I don't know. I guess I've done it so long since I was a mom at 16 until I just it's just second nature.
Mm.
Yeah, I like to listen to music once. And I love music. And that's the universal medication. So I like chamber music, classical, rhythm and blues. I'm not into the hip hop, which my grandkids are into, but I can't get a feel for that. But I love rhythm and blues and jazz and chamber as well as classical. And I just, when I need that, I just listen to it and mold a hat on blocks. And so it's like, yeah. And then I have to, technology has helped me with my community commitment because I do some meetings online. I'm still, working on some scholarships, connecting with people, sending letters. So technology has helped to facilitate my having to go out and meet with people. I do the e-meet and e-greet. And so, yeah, that's been but like I said, it's so much a part of me until I don't know. I I don't know. It keeps me alive. It keeps me alive.
What are you
And
going to do when you retire, Margot?
I don't know. I'm not gonna retire. I will never retire. I will stop working for pay. Except that I think I'm gonna the one thing I want to do is design a website. Now that's gonna be design a website and put my hats on the website and then volunteer somewhere. Um, but it's, yeah. I have a wonderful husband I've been married to for 58 years. Wonderful guy. And he's just very low key. I'm out there. He's very low key. He's very supportive. He's very quiet and very, but yeah. We're just the opposite, but we have a wonderful marriage. Yeah.
Fantastic. And my very final question, what advice would you give to any administrators out there who are aspiring to make a difference in their communities and beyond?
Know that administration is the nucleus to all we do. It's a nucleus to running a business. It's a nucleus if you're mom or if you're dad, if you're aunt or whatever. It's a nucleus to life. Everything we do, even when we pay our bills, and even when all of that is administration. Administration really is your life is it's a set of organized skills to accomplish something, right? And so just everything you do has transferability to other things. And so I think that just working is not enough. You have to give of yourself. You give it to your family. You may just be involved if you don't have kids. You may have a niece or a nephew, or but do something for someone else. It really completes you as a person. I mean, if we had more people to share, it's the sharing of your skills, your knowledges, your time, your love, that never realize that love and sharing and caring is care about yourself, and please care about yourself. When you care about yourself, you learn to care for others. And so just share those skills. The skills that you have in administration will never get old. I mean, we can get software and all of that, but they're not people. They don't have that feeling. We still need that touch. And you are the ones that can give it.
Thank you so much for allowing me to interview you, Margot. This has been an absolute privilege. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for just doing this. And good luck to everybody. Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.